Tataka ako, kung gusto Greenland, no?
Ayan, medyo naka-recover na tayo. Good evening, afternoon, morning. Sorry, medyo sirang-sira na yung body clock ko, but I'm trying to get things back into form. Pasensya na, Secretary Ronald Llamas, RNR, ka-RNR, hindi kita masabayan over the past week. So, grabe yung time zones. 10 hours difference sa Kangerlussuaq sa Greenland at saka 6 hours sa Denmark. So, I'm glad finally we can catch up.
Okay lang, nakapagpahinga ako kay Richard Darian. Slave labor, no?
Ayan.
Human trafficking.
Ayan. Nagrereklamo na, nagpaparinig na. Ha? Just to be clear, ha?
Abot ng 2 hours. No?
Just to be clear.
Sa ilang ako nagkakaroon ng 2 hours naman eh.
Naku, magpasalamat ka sa akin, R&R, ha? Ito, mga ka-R&R, let me just be clear, ha? Pagbukas ko ng WhatsApp ko, kasi sa sobrang busy yung schedule ko sa travel here, travel there, na-miss ko pa yung flight ko sa walang yung Norway Airlines na yun. I mean, in my entire life, I've never seen an airline leave ahead of schedule. Walang ya talaga yung Norway Airline na yan. Like, it's not even German time. It's like Viking time. Yung talaga kung naiwan ka sa isla, bahala ka sa buhay mo, yung ganyan. Grabe talaga.
At least that will never happen here.
I mean, grabe. First of all, fake news talaga yung Danish, Terminal 2 yan. Usually, Terminal 3, mas mabilis. They say 10 minutes lang yung security. It just happened that day, 35 minutes yung security. Talo pa yung naiyan ng Pilipinas. Biglang nagyabang ako. Mas mabilis tayo dyan sa Terminal 1. Pero sabi ko, siguro naman, iintayin tayo. Pagdating ko, 15 minutes before close na yung gate and there was only 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, yung bag ko tinapon na sa labas. I mean, like, tapos, by 3:40 yung flight, 3:41, wala nang trace of even yung afterglow, afterburn. Grabe yung mga Vikings talaga yung...
Baka napansin nila yung Middle Eastern.
Yeah, ewan ko talaga.
Kaya nag-stream ako.
Pero ito, interestingly, Middle Eastern talaga yata yung yung guy na in charge. Tapos tinanong namin, paano yan? Hindi man lang kami hinintay. Ano yung next flight? Kasi inahabol ko yung Stockholm sa Sweden. Of course, as you know, Sweden is like the Los Angeles. Yung Stockholm is like the Los Angeles of Scandinavia. So inahabol ko yan. Tapos sabi niya, the next one is 5 p.m. No, I don't think you'll make it. Sabi ko, walang yata itong mga to, hindi nga tumutulong, nega pa. Pero hinabol ko talaga yung 5 p.m. Kaya nakahabol tayo sa Stockholm.
Pero grabe, Richard, I've traveled around the world since the 80s. But I've never been to Greenland.
Yeah, it's something else. Well, I've been to, etong sasabihin ko sa'yo, parang Ronald, pag nakita ko yung mga icebergs doon, parang out of this world. Alam mo yung mga pinapakinggan kong mga soundtrack, mga Interstellar, yung mga gano'n, alam mo yung mga ibang planeta talaga. But ironically, the last time I saw something, or not so ironic, last time I saw something weird na out of this world na parang Mars colony, was nung maglaland ako sa North Korea, yung Pyongyang International Airport. Kasi pagpasok mo pa lang, makikita mo this Soviet-era 1960s aircrafts na nakapark. And then the surrounding is like emaciated land, as in no vegetation, nothing. Parang nasa service ka ng Mars. And coming in from China na very fertile, and then you see that, parang literally pumasok ka sa ibang mundo. So, this is the second time since 2018, no? I felt like out of this world. Grabe talaga yung Greenland. So, I suggest yung mga iba dyan, try to go there, try to find a good package kasi nakanap ko na medyo murang package. Before mawala yung mga icebergs, kasi nakaka-worry. I'll tell you, Ronald, pagdating ko sa Copenhagen, nakaganyan lang ako. Literally ganyan lang, ha? Walang coat. Mainit, pare, mainit. 10 degrees, 8 degrees. That doesn't make sense. It's almost November. And Greenland...
Did you see the Northern Lights?
Yes, medyo konti, pero the weather was not that good. Pero nga, sabi nga, medyo nakakaputi at nakakakinis ng skin yung walang pollution. Hindi sanay eh. Grabe.
Torn ako dahil sa Norway.
Yeah.
I won the axe throwing competition. Tinalo ko yung mga Vikings doon, no?
No, shoot!
Tapos sa Mongolia, I won the archery competition. So torn ako kung ang aking past life is Mongol, Viking.
Halo ka siguro, Golden Horde.
Parehong genocidal, no?
Golden Horde. Kaya actually, napabilib ako sabi ko mga Mongolians kasi ang tatangkad ng mga tao, di ba? I'm not a short guy, but you know, when you go to Scandinavia, lahat, mga babae, mas matangkad sa akin, mga lalaki, nasa roof na, it's like, how did the Mongolian, make it as far as, the Baltic, no? They almost conquered entire Eastern Europe. So like, mapabilib ka. Kasi yung mga Inuit, yung mga locals dyan sa Greenland, medyo kaitsura natin, no? Kasi Asiatic sila, di ba? Sila yung nag-cross ng Siberia, so yellow race sila, and then pumunta ng America, tapos nag-cross. So kamukha na, yung ibang Pinoy na kasama namin, nagiging mukhang Inuit na eh. Kasi nag-freckles na, pumuputi na. Like, so, honestly, yung mga nakita mo sa Mongolia, hindi ganun kalayo yung itsura nila pag tinignan mo yung mga Inuit, Central Asian yung itsura nila, yung mga features nila.
Imagine, napakaliit ng Mongolia ngayon, no? Napakaliit ng population, but they killed half of the human race, no?
Yeah.
Pinatay nila.
Di ba sabi nila 1/8 of humanity can trace their DNA to like Genghis Khan or something like that. They were they did a lot of things, They did a lot of crazy things.
Siya, no? Malapit-lapit na rin si Richard Haydara.
And then si Ronald the Axe Grinder, the Arrow, may pangalan ka na sa akin, Golden Horde. Ronald the Golden.
Ano ba yung aking previous life? Was I a Mongol who killed half of humanity? Or was I a Viking, no? Who terrorized half of the world? So,
Nako Ronald the AK-47. Mamaya tayo pupunta dyan sa AK-47, no? Just to be clear, dun sa isang nagpaparinig na slave labor, ito, pagbukas ko ng WhatsApp ko after 1 week, naka 24 messages from Ronald na hinahanap ako at nami-miss ako. So if you want to call it servitude, it's voluntary servitude.
baka nakidnap ka na, baka kailangan ng hostage negotiator, or
Ayan tayo
ng paratroopers,
ayan tayo
Pagka-landing ako dyan, teritoryo ko pa ng Scandinavia.
with the axe grinder.
That's my most troubled place. No? Unless people didn't know, Sweden has 20,000 islands. Akala natin tayo, maraming islands.
Sa Baltic, di ba? Oo, grabe.
Yeah, Sweden has 20,000 islands.
Grabe, no? So, 3 times almost mala Indonesia pala sila, di ba? Kasi Indonesia is 26,000, right? Incredible. That part of the world is so different. Kasi usually kasanayan natin, America, France, alam mo yung mga usual suspects, Germany, of course, Espanya.
Yes.
But you go to Scandinavia, totally different. Hindi sila consumers, simple sila manamit, halos lahat ng cars, electric. I think I did more metro in the past week. Like, sumakay ako ng metro than entire past 10 years, no? Kasi sobrang seamless. Sobrang dali mag-underground. Yung metro nila, sobrang linis. And, Ronald, ganun ba sa Norway? Di pa ako nakapunta ng Norway. Walang card. Honesty system siya. As in, it's an honesty system, Ronald. You can get in even if hindi ka of course, nagbayad ako kasi just in case daw may random check, di ba? Pero walang check, you can get in. Wala siyang yung mga dadaanan. Wala, totally walang ganun. Ganun rin ba sa Norway?
Ako dati, ginagawa ko, tumatalon lang ako 30 years ago, nung ako yung labor, trade unions, wala akong budget So, yung mga ganyan, tumatalon lang
sa
ako.
Norway?
Norway, Sweden, Denmark, tumatalon lang ako.
Hindi ka nara-random check, Ronald, kasi mukhang suspicious ka?
Hindi, pag may mag-check, punta ako CR.
Talagang boy takas pala boy takas.
Yun yung mga tricks of the trade, no?
Nako, ngayon may na.
Pero maganda yan sa Norway because Oslo is divided by a river.
Right,
no?
right.
So, aakyat ka doon sa river na yon, malilibot mo yung buong Oslo, tapos pababa, no? Doon sa kwanta. Tapos yung isang side, andun yung poorer side. Hindi yung poor na katulad sa atin, pero
I mean less privileged side.
Can you imagine Sweden at the turn of the century, no, 19th century, almost half of the population migrated, no, because of poverty. Ngayon they're one of the 10 most developed countries in the world, no?
Third happiest, fourth happiest, Sobrang
happiest, Norway. Pero imagine 100 years ago, they were so poor. No, parang Ireland, no?
Potato famine version nila, di ba? Oo,
karamihan pumunta sa US, no, North America, dahil hirap na hirap. So, ibig sabihin, may pag-asa pa tayo.
Yun nga inisip ko na, I mean, these people were like Vikings back in the day, di ba? I mean, you cannot get more brutal than Vikings, di ba? Siguro Mongolian horde lang nakakatapat doon. And yet, look at them, they're the nicest people, super honest sila, super
The
efficient
most
sila.
peaceful country ngayon, di
Oh,
ba?
most peaceful
Oo.
country, highest living standards, all of those things, di ba? So talagang, so may pag-asa tayo baka in the next 100 years.
Dahil kung ginagawang halimbawa yung Scandinavian countries, pero kung sa Scandinavian countries, yung babae na buntis, no, yung kanyang anak 1 month pa lang may allowance na. Tapos
Oh,
pag
wow.
pinanganak siya, no, hangga't walang trabaho yung bata, no, habang lumalaki, may allowance, di ba? Dahil sa kanila, the future are the children The future are
Yeah.
the babies. Alagang-alaga yan sa mga bansang yan. No? Maliban pa
And
sa napakaganda ng public education,
healthcare,
napakaganda ng,
yeah.
diba?
And Ronald, alam ko pag nag-aaral ka, meron ka pang allowance yata eh. Kunyari, hindi,
Yes.
yeah, so
Yes.
while you're studying, you get an allowance from the state. Like, ibang klase yun, no?
Yes.
And that's Denmark. Ikaw kasi Norway, mas mayaman pang Norway. I mean, this is the country.
Oh, dahil because of the oil,
Saudi
no?
Arabia of the Scandinavia yan eh, di ba? Like,
Yes.
biggest sovereign wealth fund in the world, what, $3 trillion, whatever. I mean, like, super mayaman in Norway. But
They can
Denmark,
afford to lose hundreds of billions sa kanilang wealth fund, no?
because they're
Tayo,
rich, man.
they cannot afford anything.
Yeah, we can no room for error sa atin. Oh. Yung mga mahilig magmaharlika sovereign wealth fund. So speaking of which, 'di ba? So parang it looks like we're driving the wrong lessons dyan sa Scandinavia because ang kinopya natin so far, the only thing I can think about is sovereign wealth fund, no? Which is like the least thing na bagay sa atin. But Ronald, I mean, of course, malayong Scandinavia in terms of their culture, in terms of their history sa atin. But are there like things that we can pick from them? From like for instance, in Denmark, if I'm not mistaken, sila rin behind yung windmills sa Ilocos Norte, right? In this BBM, di ba? I mean,
Oh.
last time I checked the
Ayala yun Oh.
yeah, and the Danish, and then Ayala eventually, but I think the Danish were involved with the technology and all, no? But I know that the Danish talaga almost 100% renewable na sila, no? And they're in a position to even export renewables. In fact, the people who told me about that were the Germans when they were doing their Energiewende, energy transformation, etc. And they were saying how impressed they are with the Danes. And I had no idea, like Pandora, hindi lang Maersk. Kasi Maersk ang alam kong Dane eh. There's so many global companies na Danish pala. And I was talking to our friends sa Department of Foreign Affairs and mga embassy natin dyan sa Denmark na tumulong sa atin kasi yung pala, if you go to Greenland, your Schengen should be from Denmark. Eh, yung iba sa amin, Schengen namin Aleman, Schengen namin Pranses. So they had to help me. But anyways, I was talking to them about investments and all. Apparently, the Danes are very involved in the Philippines, but they're very quiet, no? Hindi sila katulad ng mga Chinese, we'll talk about them shortly, na ang daming sinabi, wala naman dumating, yung pledge trap. Or they're not as visible as Japan because Japan builds the public infrastructure and all. They're here, they're in Palawan doing some coconut business, they're here doing some renewable business. But they're really in position to put yung Lego, by the way, apparently is Dane, right? So I didn't know that. So there were many companies na apparently Danish. I thought they're like Swedish or Dutch, no? Yung pala they're Dane. So I'm very impressed. The country of, I mean, buong Denmark yata hindi pa lang mas malaki pa yata ang QC, no? In terms of population sa buong Denmark.
Yeah.
And yet their
It's,
GDP is bigger than our entire country. Like I think they're like $500 billion GDP country. Like it's insane. It's
Yeah.
so Ronald, like
I was
honestly,
there. I was there last year. I met
Yeah.
the environment secretary. No, I met the head of the ruling party, Social Democrat yung ruling party dyan. Imagine yung environment secretary was much younger than you. No?
Yes,
Babae,
yes,
girl,
yes.
no?
Yeah.
Na, ganyan yung mga cabinet secretary nila, young people, pero very effective.
Right.
No? At very trustworthy. No? Wala yatang case of electoral fraud dyan sa Denmark. No?
Yeah.
Pumunta ako dati sa Finland. No? The candidate, siya rin yung watcher. Siya yung naglalagay ng balota. No? Siya naglalagay ng balota doon sa ballot box.
Right.
Pwede sa kanila yun dahil wala silang history ng election violence or election fraud. No? So ibang-iba. Can you imagine, no, yung kandidato ang watcher sa presinto dito sa Pilipinas?
Right.
Sa mga Scandinavian countries ganyan. Sa Sweden, yung kanilang mga local officials are not elected, they're appointed.
Right.
No? Yung halimbawa, nung na-meet ko dati, yung mayor ng Stockholm, no, a young girl, no, na very skilled sa management, no. Siguro, pag nag-develop na yung ating political culture, yung ating skill set, baka ganun na rin dapat. Appointed ng mga local managers natin. Hindi mo siya binibigay sa unpredictability ng mga ma-elect mga warlords at saka mga cartel.
Right.
Pero kaya, magandang pag-usapan niya later, no, sa separate, yung parang comparison. Paano hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na, oy, imposibleng mangyari sa atin yan. No? Ibang-iba ang Sweden sa Pilipinas. Inuulit ko, 100 years ago, they're poorer than us. No?
Yeah.
More than 40% of their population migrated because of hunger, because of unemployment, no? Because of poverty. Yung natirang 60% decided, hindi na pwede. No? We have to develop our country. No? Sana sa atin gano'n. Bago umalis ang 50%, no? Yung natitira ngayon na 80%, dapat gumawa na ng decision. Hindi na kami papayag. No? Hindi na kami papayag. We're rich and yet the country is poor. Yun yung na-discover ng mga Swedes, ng mga Scandinavians, a century ago.
Yeah, I mean, they're grabbing culture na. Not only you have kids, essentially kids, quote unquote, people younger than even me, you know, in cabinet positions and in parliament. But there, kung prime minister ka, nag-commute ka lang, and parang you're literally just treated like a public servant. Like literally, really as public servant. Nothing more, nothing less. That's it.
A friend of mine, Mona Sahlin, no?
Yeah.
Mona Sahlin, no, a minister sa Sweden, no? Siya yung gino-groom to be the next prime minister. Nung minsan pauwi siya ng bahay, no? Bumili siya ng pasalubong sa kanyang anak. No? Single mom siya eh. So bumili siya ng Toblerone, ng chocolate. Naiwanan niya yung kanyang public credit card.
Oh.
No? Naiwanan niya yung kanyang private credit card. Ang dala-dala niya yung kanyang public credit card. Yung ginagamit mo sa official functions.
Right.
So ginamit na yan to buy a 1 euro chocolate candy. Tanggal siya. Tanggal siya as minister. Yeah. No? At nasira ang kanyang future as the prime minister because of 1 euro. No? 1 euro.
Yeah.
Ginamit niya yung kanyang public credit card. That's Mona Sahlin. No? Sa Pilipinas, Diyos ko po, pinagmamalaki pag nakalusot, pag hindi na huling nagnakaw, no? Ng hundreds of millions ng ito 1 euro. Tanggal.
Yeah. Zero tolerance kasi sila sa corruption eh. I mean, like walang sinasanto sa mga bansang yan. They're absolutely honest.
1 euro lang yung ginamit mo, no?
Yun nga yung sinasabi ko, Ronald. I think mali yung bansa na ina-idol natin yung Amerika kasi sobrang questionable yung democracy nila, yung lobbies nila, yung super PACs nila. I mean, I think there's a term for the legal corruption, right? Yung term pork barrel comes from America, no? So exactly. So not only did we get our democracy from outside, meaning it was imposed on us because our elite never wanted democracy, unlike in Sweden, the monarchy, the aristocracy eventually moved towards democratization. Sa atin, not only it was imposed by a country back then that was extremely corrupt. This is late 19th century, early 20th century America. And until today, nakita natin. Kaya nakapaghinaan because I think, yun nga, mali yung mga role models natin. We look at Singapore na, you know, it's a city-state which, you know, so my connecting flight, and I was in Singapore, right, last time.
Country, no?
I mean, Ronald, of course, I was in Singapore the other week and we were talking, and dumaan din ako sa Singapore, but, I mean, Singapore has its own strengths and all, but, you know, it's not necessarily bastion of liberal democracy. So, parang mali parating tinitignan natin ng mga role models, di ba?
Cannot replicate Singapore.
We cannot. And should we, but should we even replicate, diba? I mean, look at the Singaporeans, no? They're fantastic people. I love them, but they're very stressed. It's a very competitive society, no? Lahat tiger moms, tiger parents, kaya ang taas ng mga rates ng anxiety, depression, mga ganun. Now, you go to Scandinavia, of course, they also have a lot of problem with depression, but that's because it's all purong snow and you know, like desert of snow lang makikita mo. But there, I think I was told like in the first 2 years of their education, the kids are taught social skills lang. Even ahead of arithmetic and literacy. Like, they totally have a revolutionary way of looking at education to make sure you become a complete person. You become an honest person. You become a person who looks at quality of life than just topping the race and number one here, number one there. Walang lamangan, in short, sa Scandinavian culture.
Yeah, imagine Richard, no? Almost half of the population sa Scandinavian countries, especially Sweden, never graduated from college. they graduated from study circles.
Yeah.
No? Parang self-educated sila. And yet, they're one of the most intelligent people in the world.
Right.
Diba? Hindi yan diploma mill, yung mga Scandinavian countries. No? They have study circles, parang mga teach-ins
Right.
dito nung 60s. No? Doon sila gumagawa ng sarili nilang curriculum. That's one of the foundations of their society. Participative education. No? Kaya nga, yan ang ginagamit ko sana before, nung nasa trade unions ako, yung study circle framework.
Right. Ito yung tinatawag na parang organic intellectual, no? Yeah, I mean, the education instills a lot of fundamental values. And I mean, I'm not surprised why Sweden is behind all of these global brands, no? IKEA, H&M. It's a very small country for all of these
Yes.
global brands. Volvo, Scania, all of these great cars that many people mistake as German. They're not German. They're Swedish cars. They're fantastic, very high quality. But you're right. Yun nga parang it's just so out of this world that at the same time, like, wait lang, bakit hindi natin binibigyan ng pansin ng mga ganitong mga bansa, no? I was actually also talking to some of our Filipino friends in Denmark who are residing there, or they're married, etc. And they were asking them, ba't walang masyadong Pinoy dito kumpara sa ibang parte ng Europe? Because you go to Italy, you go to Spain, di ba? Ang dami mga Pinoy. And
Yes,
of course, I understand probably there's other regulatory reasons. But one of the things I was told is that kasi medyo mataas ang cost of living, di ba? Yung disposable income daw ay hindi ganun kataas compared sa US or I don't know, Singapore or other countries. Kaya hindi siya ganun ka-attractive sa mga Filipino. But if you marry and you want to raise a family, it's head and shoulders above the United States or France or
Yes.
Spain and Italy and those kinds of countries. Yeah.
Well, partly siguro yung weather. Siyempre, mas
Yun lang, oo.
mas maganda ang weather sa Southern Europe. Ikalawa, yung language. Hindi ganun kadaling maunawaan ng Swedish. No? Unlike other languages, no?
Or
Yung,
pronounce, no? It's very hard. It's very rough language, yeah.
Yes. No? So, pero ngayon, marami tayong matututunan sa mga bansa. Not as a model, no? But mga lessons, no? Lalo na
Yeah.
social welfare. Dahil napakaganda ng social protection tsaka social welfare dyan, no? Sana nga, wag makita ng mga Pinoy yung kanilang mga kulungan, no? Yung mga kulungan nila, parang mga...
Well,
parang
Norway
mga
yata yung
no?
pinaka-notorious dyan, di ba? Like,
parang condo no?
beach
Meron
house.
kang cable TV, meron kang 5 meals a day, di ba?
Yeah.
Meron kang conjugal visit, no? Solo mo yung kwarto mo, di ba? Butsya, pag nakita yan, magmamigrate siguro yung mga kasama natin dito.
actually, I have some stories, real life stories about some Pinoys, trying to test us. But I'll have to check if I can share those, maybe. But yeah, actually, I was surprised. I was in Amsterdam a few years ago, and I was told, this is for educational purposes, by the way. I was told that Netherlands imports inmates from Scandinavia dahil naubusan sila ng accommodation dun sa mga, I mean, if your accommodation is 5-star, at some point you're gonna run out of facilities, no? So ginawa nilang penal colony yung Netherlands, right? Like, this is just crazy. It's out of this world, no?
Yeah. Talking about prisons, tingin ko magiging comfortable si President Duterte sa Den Haag.
Yan.
Dahil nakita ko yung preso room, walang laman.
Yeah.
Walang laman. So, kung sakaling matuloy yung international warrant at isuko ng Philippine government si Duterte, tingin ko hindi naman siya maghihirap dun sa preso sa Den Haag. Tsaka yung mga makakasama niya. Dahil maganda yung mga preso, parang condominium. At saka halos wala nakakulong. No? Dun sa pan. So, I will wish him luck.
So now you're officially co-host. I saw what you did there. You transitioned us to our first topic at hand. So maraming salamat. I really like what you did there. So let's talk about this shortly. No? So in our next episode, so this was kind of like an overview of, a bit Scandinavia, other countries. Wag lang tayo purong walang ganyan sa Singapore, walang sa US. There's so many other real role models. We have to look at best practices. And sabi ng Ronald, 100 years ago, Sweden was one of the richest countries, and 100 years ago, Argentina was one of the richest countries. Poorest countries ang Sweden, richest countries ang Argentina. And look at what the two countries have turned out over the 100 years. So institutions matter, mobilization matter. I mean, just the last thing on this, no? Ronald, I think one of the secrets to success of Scandinavian democracies is the highly mobilized labor sector they have, the highly progressive and mobilized civil society sector they have, no? Yung sa mga bansa na yan, kung kawawang mga aristocrats, no? Kawawa kung mayaman ka.
Yeah. Almost everyone is organized. into community organizations,
Right.
into cooperatives, into trade unions. Everybody is organized. No? Ayan yung, kaya yung mga organizations nila, yung basis ng kanilang high educational level. Diba? Yun yung, what we have here are fraternities at saka mga sekta. No? Mga
Yeah.
sects. Meron tayo. Yun yung marami
Medyo mafioso style. Yeah, medyo Italian edition tayo. Yeah,
civil society is so alive, di ba?
Yeah.
Civil society is the foundation of society, di ba? Yun yung isang major na kaibahan. So they have the social pact na with the capital, di ba? Yun yung foundation nila eh. They have the social pact na i-maintain namin yung private ownership,
Right.
private capital, pero you have to give something back, di ba? Kaya ang taas ng taxation eh. Di ba? Ang taas ng taxation. Even income tax, mataas eh. Usually yan, 40 to 50% ng sahod na pupunta sa taxes eh. Pero walang nagreklamo. Why?
Except it goes to services. Yeah.
Bumabalik eh. Dito, yun yung problema sa atin.
So you have very high tax rate, but people feel it, no? So hindi ka,
Yes.
I mean, if you have kids, you don't have to worry about their education because it's gonna be all paid, all subsidized. You don't have to worry about healthcare. You don't have to worry about basic public services. Ang ayos ng metros nila. And then here sa Philippines, kung sino mas mayaman, yung pa yung mas konti.
Tapos ngayon sa atin, you have an ex-president calling for a tax boycott. No? Wala ka rito nun eh. No?
Yeah.
Hindi mo nakita yun. Duterte calling for civil disobedience.
Wait,
no?
shit.
Tax boycott to be led by him. No?
Papa Gandhi siya.
Walang corruption.
Tatay Gandhi. Ayan tayo.
Diba? Imagine mo, sinegue mo na uli baka bumalik ka na
Hindi, ito na. Tama, okay na yan. Actually, I just wanted to raise also the issue of taxes and all kasi nagka-comment yung iba. Nagkataon mga pro-tatay din mga to, so nag-aaway na sa'yo. So now let's officially go to our next topic. Maraming salamat, Secretary Llamas. Yan. Alright, let's talk about this. So habang nasa, I don't know, icebergs ako, marami palang mga ice na nagma-melt dito sa Pilipinas in terms of, ito na, bardagulan na. Let's talk about bardagulan in the Philippines. So, from afar, I was observing mukhang Tatay Digong has really gone on the offensive and it's really attacking the powers that be for making a plea to his daughter and now suddenly I'm hearing that medyo bukas na sa ICC yung ating administration. I was like, surprise!
Nawala ka lang na a few days.
Yeah, medyo nag-escalate na. So, in fairness, yung ICC naman hindi gano'ng kalayo sa Scandinavia, so you never know. Now, going back to this, so recap tayo, what's going on here? You think that Duterte has lost it? You think he's totally out, he lost touch with the balance of power on the ground and he's really picking a fight that he cannot win? Or is this just a rant and a froth and it's just gonna go away after a while? He just has to eat his pride eventually and move on. Yeah.
Well, tingin ko, napag-usapan natin ito in mga previous episodes mo eh. Yung unity team, wala na yun. No? As early as last year, nagsimula na mag-unravel. Pero sumabog yan during the Tambaluslos. At ngayon, sumabog uli, no? Mas malaki kaysa sa sabog dun sa refugee camp sa Gaza. No? Yung mas malakas yung pagsabog. Dito sa intelligence fund. Hundreds of millions ang nawala. At least sa budget sa Congress. No? At ibibigay daw sa Coast Guard. No? So, nakita natin na itong issue na ito ay talagang tumama tumama ng malaki sa guts ng mga Duterte, no? Hindi ko sinasabi na ginagamit nila ito pang prepare sa kanilang makinarya.
Oh, of course not. They never do that.
Pero hindi ko sinasabi na itong confidential fund na ginagamit sa mga safe houses ay ginamit nila para sa mga headquarters. Hindi ko sinasabi na itong
safe house talaga.
Confidential fund na dapat ginagamit para sa mga informants ay ginamit nila para sa mga political organizers. Wala akong sinasabing gano'n. Pero saktan sila ng gusto. Kaya hanggang ngayon, hindi nila pinibitawan. No? At ang problema, yung kanilang pagdepensa, kapos na kapos. No? Si Canelo, si Harry Roque, si Digong. Lalong ibinaon si Vice President Sara Duterte.
The buong
Imagine mo,
SMNI coalition.
imagine mo inamin ng tatay ng intelligence fund ay dapat gamitin sa extrajudicial killings. Pero mo inamin ng tatay na itong intelligence funds ay dapat gamitin para ipapatay si Congresswoman Castro. No? Imagine mo inamin ng tatay na ito ay ginamit para sa ROTC field trips at saka sa seminars, no, na illegal.
Yeah.
No? Imagine mo yung depensa na yan. At ngayon, kung nakita mo,
Depensa ba yan, Ronald, or Freudian slip?
narinig mo, sabi ng
Ronald, depensa ba yan or Freudian slip? Lusot. Medyo iba yata.
Baka. Imagine mo, last week, galit na galit si Digong, no? Sabi niya, wala silang respeto sa aking anak. No? Wala silang respeto. Hindi nila ginagalang. No? Kaya nagtatawag ako ng tax boycott. I-boycott ang pagbabayad ng buwis, pamumunuan ko.
Gandhi.
Unless mapatunayan ng gobyerno na wala silang corruption. No? Para namang sinasabi mo na yung ulan manggagaling sa lupa imbis na galing sa langit.
Farmali. Farmali. Yan.
Lamborghini.
Lamborghini.
Diba? Only in the Philippines na ganyang kalakas ang loob. Diba? Ganyang kalakas ang loob ng mga hipokrito. No? Sigaw ng sigaw si Harry Roque. Itong kongreso, mga hypocrites.
Aba?
Parang nakatingin sa salamin habang sinasabi niya yun eh. No? Minsan nga, imbitahin mo dito si Harry. Sabay-sabay tatlo.
Hindi, mahirap na si Harry eh. Last time kasama kami sa Al Jazeera, excuse me, gumagano'n siya. I'm talking, don't be rude. Gumagano'n siya. Like, okay. Siyempre jet lag ako, nasa San Diego ako. Ang layo ng flight ko eh.
Ulitin mo nga.
Hindi, wag na. Excuse me. Next time na yan. Next time. Oh my, tignan mo, sobrang pulang-pula na ako ah. Oh my God. SMNI in the house. Oh God.
Diba? Diba napag-usapan natin yan, yung statement ni Kwan? Yung statement ni Vice President Sara. Kita mo, binanata niya yung mga pinopolitika, yung kanyang confidential fund. In one paragraph. In next sentence, tumalon siya sa gera sa Gaza. No? Gera between
Wait. Next episode yan, Ronald. Medyo mag-serious tayo. I-park muna natin yan. Kasi I'm gonna defend Sara. I'm gonna say something in defense of Sara later and you can guess what I'm gonna say. But balikan muna natin ito. No. Okay, ganito. So, both of us have been talking about this unsustainable coalition of convenience, no? Yung align. So this was always this was always unsustainable because there can always be one king, right? And I think it looks like 2020, 2021 pa lang, Duterte was not appreciating how adept the Marcoses are. I mean, these are OG, right? In the gangster, sila yung OG,
Wala
di ba?
siyang believe eh.
Wala siyang believe, right? In-underestimate niya talaga si BBM, in-underestimate niya Marcoses, but he forgot that these guys are the OG, right? So now na OG sila ng mga OG, mukhang hindi niya he's still struggling to come to terms with this new political reality that the OGs are back in power. And once OGs are back in power, they're not gonna allow the newbies, right? The JVs to take over. It's just not gonna work that way.
Bibigay sa kanila wala silver platter.
It's not gonna happen. Right.
Where do these people come from, no?
We know where they come from. No, but Ronald, ganito, ako naman, I just felt na, I'm not saying wishful thinking, but I was just thinking na, hindi naman siguro ganun ka barangay level si tatay to not appreciate not only realignments, but the hierarchical reshuffling that is happening in Philippine politics. But it looks like it's more precinct than wishful thinking because I think between the two of us, ako medyo skeptical pa rin ako because I always felt if ideas and ideologies divide the left, what brings the trapos together, the conservative powers together is shared interest. But it looks like even shared interest may not be enough, di ba? Because let's look at it, if you look at it, all SARA has to do is just to keep it nice and cool, and she'll be the front runner for 2028. And BBM, all he has to do is not to pick a direct fight with Duterte or not bring the ICC issue, and he can have it smoothly more or less within the next 4 or 5 years. But it looks like that's not working anymore, no? Because one
Well,
side is pushing the envelope over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. Shared interest can only last you so much.
Yeah.
In this case, it only lasted until the election. After the election, nakikita mo na yung cracks
Yeah.
between GMA and BBM, no? Nakikita mo na yung cracks between GMA and Martin Romualdez as early as after the election. Even with the sister, kapatid na yan, ha?
Yeah.
Nagsimula na yung cracks immediately after the election. During the first SONA pa lang Diba, nandun na yung cracks
Right.
Dahil nga, it's just shared interest. And shared interests are the less powerful basis for unity. Kahit papano, yung political, yung ideological, mas solid yan kahit papano. Mas siopaw yan rather than hot air balloon. No?
Well,
Pero in this case, sumakabog na.
In defense of, not in defense of unity on a moral level, but in defense of the unity in terms of tactical discussions, akin lang naman kasi, Ronald, I think there were two reasons for Duterte to be optimistic that the unity will hold, no? One was they just felt na China will remain a major player in Philippine politics, no? Na si Marcos Jr. will probably not be super accepted by the West because of the stigma, etc. So China will inevitably be the patron of Philippine politics, and that's something that the Dutertes are very comfortable with, no? In one way or another, in terms of, like the major external partner. The second one is, I think they were also expecting that the never Marcos opposition will remain very, very powerful, or at least very vocal and mobilize for the foreseeable future. So that will essentially box in Marcos. Kumbaga, kung ikaw si Marcos, wala ka ng choice. Hindi ka ganun katanggap ng mga West. Dito, patay ka, inaaway ka ng mga progressives. So you're really left with China and Duterte's, right? I don't think that assumption was totally out of this world, right? Because I think if someone asked us last March and May, what were your worries? Your worries that BBM will have no choice but to double down on continuing the Duterte line because he's not going to find acceptance in the West, nor with the opposition and all. And to our surprise, or actually not full surprise, the West has embraced him even more than what I thought because of course, the China element. Precisely because of China, they don't want the Philippines to go down the Cambodia, Hun Sen line. But the second one is how the opposition the pink movement kind of just moved out of the picture, right? So we were angry and frustrated with that in a sense that that's a big opportunity lost. But in a way, there was a blessing in disguise. In a way na BBM suddenly feels comfortable. Like, ay, okay pala tomato. Baka si Maros, pwede pa. But you get what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying, Ronald? That was not inevitable. So I think ironically, paradoxically, the weakness of the opposition made BBM more comfortable with the more with pivoting away from Duterte's and eventually from. So I call it the bear hug strategy, right? By embracing the BBM, the West, and by semi-embracing the BBM in the part of the opposition, they actually encourage him to move to the other direction, right? It kind of looks like that bear hug strategy work. If I were to put the term, I'll call it the bear hug strategy.
Tama yung
right?
sabi mo, Richard, yung ikalawang sinabi mo na kung na-harness ng opposition yung 15 to 16 million votes ng pink wave, no? At na-consolidate yung mga basically volunteers na yan, that would have been a game changer for the opposition.
Yeah.
No? Yan yung magre-rest ng political capital sa midterm and hopefully sa 2028. Pero hindi nangyari.
Yeah.
No? Nasayang. Hindi dahil nag-fizzle out. Hindi minaximize. Hindi hinarness. Hindi kinonsolidate. Kaya yan din yung naging basis kung bakit mabilis nag-unravel yung unity team. Dahil walang threat
Exactly.
Kung malakas yung opposition, it would have bound them together Diba?
Exactly.
Yun yung kaibahan. Yung bear hug ay tingin ko dapat makita nila yung writing on the wall. Dapat nakita nila na China wasn't able to deliver nung panahon ni Duterte kahit pro-China si Duterte. Less than $1 billion out of a $24-25 billion of commitment. So, ibig sabihin, lalo na ngayon na mas maraming problema ang China, they cannot deliver. Objectively, ay vulnerable si Marcos na mag-pivot sa West. mag-pivot sa US dahil kitang-kita naman how the Chinese weren't able to deliver. No?
Yeah.
Yun yung bear hug na yon ay more or less inevitable dahil sa failure ng China. At dahil sa, in a way, the failure of the Duterte government to harness Chinese support. Kung halimbawa kahit kalahati ng commitment ng China pumasok nung panahon ni Digong, halimbawa nagkaroon ka ng fast train, di ba? Nagkaroon ka ng
just one,
500 hectare
just
industrial
one,
estates sa Clark, di ba? Yung magkakaroon ka ng mga iconic projects which will define the relationship with China. Hindi lamang ng Duterte government kundi ng Pilipinas. Then baka mag-hesitate si BBM na mag-pivot sa West. Pero nung nakita, wala namang i-deliver, wala namang ibibigay. Lalo na pumunta siya sa January 6 sa China, no, state visit. Nakita niya, there's nothing here. Except the two bridges in Manila, no, na rehash lang. Na sinama pa doon sa commitment ng China. Nagbobolahan, naglolokohan. No? So, at that time, pa na yun, no turning back na talagang magpipivot siya sa West at specifically sa US.
Yun nga, and my point, of course, is that was also not inevitable on the part of China, right? If they took the Philippines more seriously, if they played their cards well, if yung makapili, yung mga local experts na kausap nila ay medyo matino-tino, di ba? They wouldn't be in this position because you're absolutely right. I always said, look at Africa. The African Union building is built by China. Huawei ZT runs all of their big communications. So it's in your face that China is here and helping you. By the way, that was a complete donation last time I checked. So they didn't even make like, I don't know, a new Davao City Hall or like, you know what I'm saying? Wala silang iconic, in your face, we're here to help kind of projects. It was all empty hot air talk. Pogo lang yata pumasok. Baka yung 1 billion na sinabi mo, parang pogo lang yata.
The bridge in Intramuros.
Yung bridge, at saka yung bridge sa Makati na 2 lane, magpo 4 lane, tapos magto 2 lane. Like, oh my God, how is it? Sobrang traffic dito, dapat sobrang maluwang doon.
Pero gusto kong defense ng konti ang China. Hindi naman problema lang ng China na hindi sila nagpasok na investment.
Yeah.
Makita naman nila kung anong klaseng gobyerno ito. No? Makita naman nila kung itong mga scoundrels na kaharap nila. No, sa China kasi, pag yung project mo nag-collapse o naging biktima ng corruption, no? Swerte ka na kung ikaw ay makulong.
Yeah.
Baka mag-disappear ka na lang. Kaya natakot din
Pero Ronald, you're being unfair.
No?
Ronald.
They might disappear no? Imaginein mo, nag-offer sila ng libo-libong tonelada ng prime rice. No? Ang sabi ng gobyerno, wala kaming lalagyan.
Yeah, you're right.
Tinanggihan, di ba?
You're right, in fairness.
Meron kang humihingi ng project sa China, ang pakilala niya, Governor of the Visayas. No? A non-existent position. No? Pero kilala ko yung gagong yan. No? Kilala ko yun. No? So, ibig sabihin, kung ikaw ang mga...
Oy, baka iba na yung trabaho niya. Governor na siya of Northern Philippines.
Wala. Nag-disappear na. No? Wala ka nang pabalitaan doon sa Governor of the Visayas.
Nasa Shenzhen na. Hindi, ito, Ronald. Come on, the Philippine elite must not be worse than, I don't know, Rajapaksas of Sri Lanka or like the ruling party in Laos. Those countries, Laos...
yung comparison mo. Dalawa naman yun.
Pero yung Laos, nakukuha ng high-speed railway. Kaso yun nga yung problema, may high-speed railway sila, pero saan ka pupunta? It's like having a Lamborghini in the middle of a barangay with nothing, right? Like, so, of course, malaking question yung sustainability ng ibang projects nila. But, yun nga, the Rajapaksas at least got the Hambantota airport. I mean, and they got the world's emptiest airport built. Pretty nice, big.
At least, Richard, yung Mindanao Rail.
Yun nga kahit Davao City Hall lang sana na bago.
Wala nangyari, di ba? Oo.
Yeah. Wala, yun nga, so na Duterte si Duterte.
Malaki. Si SARA at saka si Digong na, may nagawa dito. Kahit yun, wala Diba? Ano yung pagmamalaki mo?
So na Duterte si Duterte. na 6 months siya ng China. 6 months na, ayusin ko lang.
Wala akong sinasabi na poetic, ha? Wala akong sinasabi
Poetic justice.
That they deserve it. Wala akong sinasabing gano'n.
Wala akong sinasabi ka. Kaso Ronald, alam mo, ang problema ko dyan sa poetic justice argument na is parang ginusto niyan. Hindi namin ginusto yan. Hindi ka namin binoto si Digong. Ang nagsusuffer ang Pilipinas. Because Ronald, I don't know, probably you also agree with me. Ayoko rin umasa lang sa mga US lang at yung mga ganyang bansa kasi limitado lang mga kuha natin dyan. Di ba? Gusto mo naman medyo diversified ng portfolio. I think you and I are the more reasonable guy who are for Chinese investments in the Philippines provided hindi sila questionable.